In San Bernardino, residents have encountered various forms of police misconduct, which include illegal detention and arrest. Over 60% of the residents have experienced or witnessed some form of police misconduct. In 2022, a San Bernardino resident was awarded $1.5 million in a lawsuit for a false arrest and excessive use of force by local law enforcement officers. Another recent case involved racial profiling, where data indicated that African American and Latino residents were disproportionately targeted. In San Bernardino, police misconduct can manifest in several different ways, but we are only discussing the brutality topic of it. Excessive force is when officers use more physical force than necessary to subdue an individual.
Hi, it's Hannah. I'm going to be discussing our 3 annotated bibliographies. The first one being Black and Blythe, The Black Experience in San Bernardino by Sean Johnson. In a study regarding the Black experience in San Bernardino, Johnson found that police brutality is a big concern amongst the Black community, but not taken as seriously by other groups in society due to bias. Because these issues do not affect all society, they tend to be ignored. Therefore, there's little to no policy change being done to address them. Johnson interviewed residents in San Bernardino who had personal experiences of feeling threatened or unsafe by police or experienced harassment. He also found that many Black residents do not feel comfortable calling the police if any type of crime occurs. Through many studies and interviews, Johnson gathered testimonies from many subjects in regards to police harassment, and subject 2 describes a situation where he called the police because his neighbor's dog attacked his daughter, and when the police arrived, they harassed subject 2, who was the caller and victim in the situation. Continuing on with our bibliographies would be Police and Trauma by Kay Henning from 2024. They discuss the impact of police brutality, harassment, and beratement on the mental and physical health of people of color, emphasizing its effect on youth. We describe how there are systemic issues regarding police discrimination because it's historically rooted in racial control and discrimination, and policy reform would reduce aggressive policing. They then go on to discuss how police brutality created everlasting trauma for victims, such as anxiety, PTSD, depression, and more. And this can explain why 70.4% of youth in juvenile justice systems in San Bernardino have a diagnosed mental illness. Moving on to our last bibliography would be Armed and Dangerous, an examination of fatal shootings of unarmed Black people by police. And they discuss the most violent form of police brutality, which is the death of Black individuals. And these fatal incidences implement fear and distrust in law enforcement. And they gathered 78 cases, and they found that most police officers do not face major consequences of the killing of Black citizens. And this lack of accountability suggests a devaluation of Black lives in the justice system. They call for more accountability for the police officers, and they plead for advocacy for the recognition of injustice and the value of Black lives. And in San Bernardino, a Black person is 0.8 times as likely to be killed by a police officer than a white person in San Bernardino from 2013 to 2021.
When sworn in to be a law official, each officer is assigned the sole responsibility to protect and serve society. We have come to learn that these officials at times further utilize force or violence more than necessary for the situation. These instances can be described as police brutality, which can be categorized into many types depending on the severity. Some seen in the San Bernardino County can be the use of excessive force. This can be seen as utilizing a baton to combat a resisting individual or beating down an individual stating potential weapon, as well as committing wrongful imprisonment, which can be done by stating an individual is the perpetrator of a case with inconclusive evidence. And lastly, but not limited to, can be seen as wrongful search and seizure. This can be done by searching an individual's belongings without an official.
Hi, I'm Angel, and I was going to provide a current update on the topic. So there aren't a lot of notable cases of police misconduct in San Bernardino, but I was able to find 2 cases that stood out within the last 2 years. The first case that I found out took place earlier this year in June, and it involved a man named Billy Hill. Hill apparently matched the description for a man that had stolen a motorcycle, but was apparently cleared by a police officer. But Hill's attorneys also say that the police officers were searching for a suspect in a hit-and-run accident, but that was unrelated to Hill. Shortly after he was cleared, 2 officers attempted to take him into custody. Although he did not necessarily comply with the officers, his lawyers believed it was an excessive use of force since he was tased and beaten by a baton around 16 times. Hill's attorneys believe that the officers were aggressive at their initial contact and used an excessive amount of force. Hill suffered broken bones on both of his legs. Hill and his lawyers are planning on filing. In the second case that I was able to find, there was not a lot of information about it. They didn't disclose the suspect's name or the officers' names, but it was reported on in November of last year. The situation involved a police pursuit on a stolen vehicle. The suspect crashed into a pole, then he was pinned on the ground by 2 police officers who attempted to detain him. One of the police officers punched the suspect multiple times on the ground while he held onto one of his hands. Then the other officer got a hold of both of the suspect's hands, and one of the officers kneed the suspect about 3 times in the head. A retired LAPD sergeant believes that this behavior was unnecessary and excessive. She says that the officers should only use the necessary amount of force that it takes in order to take a suspect into custody. But in this case, she said she sees the officers trying to punish the suspect because he had the temerity to run. The officer who kneed the suspect was being investigated by the San Bernardino Police Department, but I was unable to figure out what conclusion they came to.
Solutions on police brutality. The San Bernardino Police Department attributes much of the success to a proactive approach to law enforcement, intelligence-led policing, and collaborative partnerships. This new alliance with CHP will build on these efforts, pulling resources and expertise to enhance citywide safety. With additional CHP support, SBPD will strengthen patrols in highway traffic areas, increase rapid response capabilities, and engage in targeted crime prevention operations.